All right, all right, all right. Mm-mm. Okay, good morning, everybody. You hear us loud and clear? All right, so I am live in Cape Town. Hello, this is this is your favorite news correspondent live from Cape Town. And in the studio in Johannesburg, we have Bakabantu Kaka. And then in her own office in Johannesburg, we have the mysterious Phumi Mashiko. Everybody's here.
Mysterious? Why? I'm an
So,
open book.
I don't know.
Oh,
Hey, you.
this is Phumi rocking some makeup early this morning.
I know. Look at you, Pums.
You see, this is absolutely what I love about like bright lipstick. Like I wear makeup every morning, but usually my lipsticks are like muted. The minute I wear pink lipstick or like red lipstick, everyone's like, "Wow!"
Yeah, I mean, it's like you women get upset with us when we don't notice that you've had a haircut.
I love
changed
it.
Yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of women who get very upset when you don't go. Oh, well, you've got a new outfit. You've got a new hairstyle.
I don't know who those women are. I'll point it out. I'll point it out. I'm like, what do you think about what do you think about my outfit? What do you think about my hair? I'll point it out. This morning, though, so I had a terrible night. I couldn't sleep. I've had like 3 hours of sleep, and this morning, coming into the office, I forgot my headphones.
Oh, Jesus. So you're having to listen to us through the speaker.
So I have to listen to you through the speaker. Good news is nobody's here yet.
Uh-oh. What about when they arrive? It's going to be noise.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll get here after we're done.
Well, there's quite a lot to get into today. I'm down here because I've got a couple of meetings with some clients, which I love. Means that we're going to be bringing you some exciting and new and terrific things. Among them, a new season of Blind History is coming soon. That's one of the reasons I'm down here too. So that's going to be great. And it's for all the Star Wars fans, it's today is Revenge of the 5th. Yesterday was May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you.
There we go. For all the super turbo nerds in our audience, this is a special 2 days for us. Isn't it great? Are you one of these turbo nerds, Bagabantu?
I take umbrage with that. We're not nerds, we're geeks. There's get the wording right. Those are the smart ones. We're the ones that are interested in the comic books and the video games. But yeah, dude, I was happy yesterday. Like my friends, like my WhatsApp just looked like May the 4th, May the 4th, May the 4th, May the 4th. Then I was like, nerd.
I love it.
I was bullying myself yesterday.
It's so good.
And are you super excited for Disney Plus coming and the new Mandalorian?
Mm-hmm. Well, that was already pirated, for me not to disclose any people's scandals.
The new season.
That's old news now.
Old news, but like the new one is coming. What is it coming up? End of this year, I think. Yeah, I think
that's the one I'm talking about.
No, Obi-Wan Kenobi is coming out. Cool.
So I think just for all the people who are going to complain immediately that you've got it wrong. So you're talking about the Book of Boba Fett, which we've already seen, which features the Mandalorian.
Yes.
And then, as Bakabantu says, the Obi-Wan story is coming at the end of this month. And that's going to be exciting because that'll be a full movie.
Yeah, that'll be a full movie. And apparently it's just going to be one season, so must watch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So apart from that, I noticed the Met Gala happened in America. There were two things that happened that are really just they kind of separate the American population from the people who run the place. The Met Gala and the White House Correspondents' Dinner were both two events which, a lot of people in America get very excited about. I don't know why, because the Met Gala is almost like our opening of Parliament, except maybe slightly better models and slightly weirder outfits.
Except this year was exceptionally dull. Like,
was it? I didn't look.
One of the most exciting themes that they've had, right? So the Gilded Age, American, what did they say? Fashion in American anthology or something like that. And then people just, and white tie for the guys. My God, How boring. Like, this is the year where, if you think about what the Gilded Age is for them, right? And the
Yeah.
mythology of fashion, this is the year where, like, tight bodices and popping out boobs and, like, puffy. Come on. They were so boring.
Again,
It
I
made
didn't,
me also,
I couldn't be
there was no
bothered to
real-
actually. I didn't want to watch the whole thing from beginning to end, but I did see some pictures that came up on the internet, and so these people don't know how to dress. And I'm saying that, I'm hardly a fashion icon myself, but these people don't know how to dress. They don't know. They all look ridiculous. There were a lot of dresses that didn't even look like dresses. I think there's a point in fashion where you come in too hot. You're trying so hard to impress everybody and to be different, and maybe you get talked into it by, I don't know, moron fashion consultants or even worse.
No,
And these
You're
people arrive and
gonna be the talk of the town. Your PR
they
team
look like
is on fire there.
they look like fools though.
oh, this is like the opportunity to be out there. This is the opportunity to take avant-garde fashion and put it on the red carpet, right? And
Yeah, they missed it.
they
Of
missed the opportunity. In my view, I think they missed the opportunity. But you know who I did miss, and who I miss always on the red carpet, is Joan Rivers.
Oh, I know. That woman, you know, she used to tell them the truth.
A perfectly placed, kind of like a perfectly placed
I,
insult. It
I have
was
to
what
say,
I was missing.
like that is probably what's missing for me in all of this, because I do think it's fair to say, like, the little bits of the White House Correspondents' Dinner that I saw, Trevor Noah did a very good job. I mean, I think he balanced it out beautifully. He did speak some truth to all of those very, very coddled, very out of touch people who are meant to be the connection, the fourth estate, right, between what's really going on and the ordinary folks. But they're also meant to be the people who hold those people in power to account. And I don't get that feeling. In America, I get a feeling that the media and the politicians are in cahoots. And
You
sometimes in
know,
South Africa, you get that.
you
in
know.
South Africa, we have the SABC. You definitely get that.
Yeah, correct.
Funny you say that. It's what I've been thinking about it. When Kanthan's on later, we're gonna chat a little bit more about that. But it's just America, man. America. That's what I
Well,
gotta say. Depending on what you, so
Well,
if you're watching Fox, if you're watching CNN, if so there is some kind of fringe independent, like, craziness that's also happening, but by and large it's lost a lot of shine in some of those places,
it
hey.
has. I don't think that's an unfair thing to say. I think that's about right. But what we need is more people who speak the truth. Joan Rivers, she would say to people, "You look like a fucking idiot," you know? No one, like, you get the very distinct feeling. You know the whole story of the emperor has no clothes, and to cut to the chase on that one, because we're not here to tell children's stories. But the fact is, no one is prepared to say to a lot of these very powerful and influential people in the world, celebrities, politicians, media people, powerful business people, no one's prepared to say to them, "Hey, you look like an idiot and take the risk," because the cost is quite high. You get,
no, everything is connected now, Gareth. These
yeah,
people could destroy you. Social
they could,
media, all of these things. Yeah.
right? Yeah, they can destroy
Cancel
you. So,
culture. Yeah.
so unfortunately, what we've done then is we've pushed all the really powerful and honest social commentary to the sides, and instead we've got a big balloon in the middle of people who just blow smoke up each other's backside because they're all on the same side.
Yeah.
You
It's an
know,
echo chamber.
yeah, and I don't like that. I really don't like that at all.
There's
That
a
to me
big
is boring.
word there, Bakaman, to echo chamber.
I know what's this movie.
Starting somewhere.
Well, I've been hanging out with you old people long enough.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well, way to bury the lead on Kanthan. Like, you're supposed to, like, oh, Kanthan's coming in tonight, a returning champion, like an entire promo. And you're just like, oh, we'll talk to
oh, he's
Kanthan
gonna
later.
get that. He's gonna get that at 7. He'll get that at 7.
Can we talk about something that has come up quite a lot? Everybody was talking about how Will Smith went up on stage at the what was it, Oscars, and did what he did, and we've spoken about that ad infinitum. But there was an attack on Dave Chappelle. I don't know if you saw this. A guy ran up on stage and like tried to rugby tackle Dave Chappelle. Anyway, Dave Chappelle brushed himself off. Security came onto the stage, took the guy away, and he carried on with his show. And then Dave Chappelle's security team taught this guy a nice lesson, and they roughed him up a little bit.
It was more than just Dave Chappelle's like security people. I mean, it was also Dave Chappelle's like homies.
Yeah.
They were just they went full on ghetto on this poor guy.
Yeah.
Well, this poor guy.
Justice.
Let me tell you something. This is what we need. I said it the other day when Mike Tyson punched that guy and beat him up. I said it then. I said what people need to realize is that because we live in this digital age where we all are hiding behind a screen and we have an avatar as ourselves, and we think we can say what we want, and we get told that, you know, you can get all uppity with just about anyone, and there's no consequence, because if you're just an ordinary old person and they're a celebrity, they'll pay the price. And here, for the second time in a row, and I hope there are many more of these, and they get more and more like obviously compelling in terms of the storyline. The storyline is, if you're some ordinary bullshit slacktivist and you run up to Mike Tyson and you look for shit with him, he's going to punch you in the face. And you give Dave Chappelle shit, he's going to hit you too. And I know we talked about the pluses and minuses of what Will Smith did. You can argue about whether or not Mike Tyson should have done what he did. You can argue about whether Dave Chappelle's homies and his security detail had to do what they did. But ultimately, what we're all realizing is there's a big teaspoonful of reality being fed back into our system, where you can't just say what you want to anyone. You can't interrupt a guy's show and walk onto the stage during a show where you are not the reason people are there. They've paid money to see Dave Chappelle, you stupid idiot, not you. When you rugby tackle Dave Chappelle, you are not just doing that for your LGBTQ. That was apparently the reason he did it, because he's upset with what Dave Chappelle said about trans people. So he does this thing, and then he thinks people are going to enjoy him after that. Well, I'm glad he looks like this now. Here's how he looks.
This guy came there with ill intentions. He came, I don't know how he did it, right? I don't know how he got into the Super Bowl with a gun and a knife.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know how people got in there with their cell phones. When Dave Chappelle was here, performing here, you had to lock your bloody cell phones away at the beginning of the show. And I was just like, this nigga here, right? Because you got a little pouch to put your phone in. And it's like, right? So how the hell? How the hell do all those people have cell phones to be taking? But also, I was hell of impressed with Jamie Foxx, right? He rushed the stage. He was in there with the group of people, like,
good,
helping his homie out. Like Dave Chappelle got tackled, but he didn't like lose his cool. He came back swinging. You know, it's just like
Dave Chappelle is a big dude, though, so like it makes sense.
And he's come through a lot. He can handle himself, you know, like Chris Rock did so beautifully when Will Smith behaved like he did. And you know what I love, and I'm sorry that it has to be black men who lead the way here. Bakabantu, this is where, you know, the black man is called upon to be the real man again in this situation, I'm afraid. And people don't like any of this stuff when I say real man, or, you know, we point out that it's all black men who are having to stand up for themselves here. But honestly, this is just another example. And I know this audience of ours, I'm preaching to the choir here. I mean, nobody in our audience is dumb enough to think that it's okay for someone to, because they're upset with something you say, rush up to the stage and ruin the show for everybody. But everybody else who's not in this audience needs to understand that if you're going to do this and you're going to screw with a comedy act, which people have paid money to see in the Hollywood Bowl, you are going to get punched in the face. And again, I'm going to show this picture of this man. Let this be a warning to all those other moron activists out there. And again, activist in inverted commas, because these are not people who change the world in any way. They just misbehave because they get attention online. That's all they do. That's all this guy was after.
Yeah.
He was never... The intention from a moron like this, the intention is never to change people's minds or to have a conversation or to improve the understanding around a specific subject. This guy doesn't know that is the real purpose. He just wants to cause a scene.
So, because you're showing that picture, and I saw like videos of him being put into the ambulance and all, and I kept thinking to myself, what has actually happened to his arm? Have they like dislodged it from the socket? Why is it turned around like that? You know, why?
No.
How did that happen? What the hell's going on with the man's arm?
Well, let's just describe it to everybody here. So he's got
Kind of looks like a Nicki Minaj pose.
he's sort of got his one arm out and in front of him, but the elbow's turned the other way around. He's wearing black nail polish on all of his nails. He's got clearly quite a lot of bruising on the facial area. And this guy clearly thought that the real world was just like Twitter, and you can just say whatever screw you, Dave Chappelle, with your millions and millions of followers. Me and my 20 followers are just as important. No, you are not. Shut your mouth.
Although, guys, we must take a moment to talk about the comebacks, right? So when Dave kind of like dusted himself out and got his jacket properly back on, the first thing he said was like, I think that was a trans man. And while we were still shocked at that, Chris Rock, who had also rushed the stage in the moment of confusion, came up to Dave, took the mic, and was like, was that Will Smith?
I love those guys. I love them. Thank you.
What is happening in LA?
Well, what is happening in America?
Well, what you're seeing, I think, all over the world is that a lot of people who maybe just we took it for granted that civilization behaves a certain way, that societies, in order to move forward and to be productive and constructive, must move in a certain direction. And we took it for granted that everyone was on that page. And there are clearly some people who don't agree with those things. They don't agree with freedom of speech. They don't agree with the fact that someone who's making a comment is allowed to make a comment, especially if it's part of an entertainment show. But not necessarily, because everyone on earth is entitled to their opinion, but you are not entitled to get physically violent because you believe someone else's words, in inverted commas, are violence. And we're starting to see a bit of a clash of cultures here. And what's happening is it's gone all the way this way, where basically, it's believe all women and words of violence, and then silence is violence, and then all of this. These crazy ideas have come in, which I think a lot of people thought, okay, well, that doesn't sound right, but let's not cause too much of a noise. And now you see the backlash for that. It's like, oh, no, here's some reality right in your face. This is how it actually works. And it was bound to happen because the pendulum swings. So we're going to see a lot more of this. And in fact, another thing that's just happened, which so many people are going to be very, very upset about. I don't really have a dog in this fight, the abortion thing. But it looks like, a draft of the judgment in the Supreme Court of the United States case to dismiss the findings that kind of put Roe versus Wade into the position it got into, which is the most controversial probably in US judicial history. That is the case that made it federally acceptable for people anywhere in the United States to have access to abortions. And there are controversial parts of this legislation, which we can get into if you want to, about whether or not abortion should be legal, who should decide.
Kanthan wants to get into this.
We will.
One of Kanthan's big points today.
I think we will, but the actual, no one wants to go into the detail. They want to say, this is my opinion, and the judges either agree with me, which means they're great, or the judges don't agree with me, which means they're wrong. And that's not how it works. These are people who are probably much more versed in American law than any of us. And we're not looking at the details of whether it's states that decide these things or the federal government, which is really what this case was about. And if that judgment is actually the work of the justices and it was leaked on purpose, we need to know what that's all about, because that's probably an egregious breach of not only the law, but probably also of all institutional and judicial precedent. So we'll have to see what happened here. there's also this ongoing Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, which is another thing in the culture war, right? Because it gets worse and worse. Apparently, this Amber Heard attacked a security guard. Johnny he'd hired a security guard. She threw a Red Bull can at Johnny, and this guy had to get in the way, and he took a couple of like fists or slaps or kicks or whatever it was. She threw a bag at him. She was spitting. I mean, she sounds like a complete nutcase. But let us not also take the binary approach and go, oh, well, that must mean Johnny's a good guy. Because he's not. This is a guy who left his wife and kids from a previous relationship, just abandoned them to be with this hot as hell, but clearly demented Amber Heard. So he's not a saint either, right, Pums? I mean, you can't, nobody here is an innocent party. They both are as crazy as each other.
Listen, the thing for me about y'all know this. I was just like, when it started, I was like, who the hell is Amber Heard? Right? I was like, what am I listening to? What is going on here? And we know all of the mayhem and madness of Johnny Depp when he was younger. We love Johnny and Pirates of the Caribbean and the character that he created there. And it is mind-blowing for me to listen to what we've listened to so far, right? Knowing that in every single one of these cases, there are always three sides to the story. Mm-hmm. And I think today she's starting yesterday, I think she's taking the stand. So it's her section of the whole time I'm listening to this thing and I'm like, it was like when we were listening to the red top table talk with
Jada.
With Jada and Will. All of this is just like,
it's like airing your dirty laundry on the biggest stage in the world.
But what shit life are these people living?
Well, this is where I'm happy to not be a famous celebrity. You know, there was a point in history, not so long ago, we can all remember, it's in living memory, where everybody wanted to be famous. Do you remember that? And I mean, there's still people who want to be famous. I get it. I look at these people. I look at Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, Will Smith, Jada Pinkett. I look at what happened to Dave Chappelle yesterday. I see the way people in Hollywood really are when the cameras turn off and you hear the testimony of what they actually think of each other and how they behave behind the scenes. And you think, I wouldn't want to be around those people. These are not the people you want to be around. If you took me and helicoptered me into Hollywood now, and those are the people I had to spend my time with, I would be a miserable person. No, thank you. So Congo Chris says, you should watch the trial today. Amber is on the stand. I cannot watch it for longer than 5 minutes. Her testimony comes across as extremely self-centered. So that's Congo Chris's take on it. Hey, I don't know. This woman is, I don't know how I never kind of paid any attention to her before, because like Phumi, I was sort of surprised and I felt like I hadn't really been on top of things. And then I see this woman and she's very attractive, but my God, she's fucked in the head.
Apparently she is on Aquaman 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what has happened over the past week with all of this, with the tapes coming out and whatnot, there has been a petition going around. So the Aquaman film has now been pushed out. It was supposed to come out later this year, but now it's actually been pushed out to 2023. And so there's a petition. I think there's like 3 million signatures on the petition to say, listen, they need to reshoot all the scenes with this woman. She needs to go, especially in light of how Will Smith was sanctioned by the Academy.
Right.
How in like overnight he was just like banned for 10 years. And all of this, lost jobs and all of that kind of stuff. People are just like, this nutcase.
She's a total nutcase. Have you watched her reaction to some of the testimony while the trial's been going on? Because that's the other fun part about this. And I said last Friday, I feel terrible, and I had to apologize to everybody that I haven't been paying as much attention to this trial as I should have, because it's really entertaining, right? I mean, you can take. We're trying to take important lessons from this. Maybe there's a comment on the culture. Maybe there's something that we can all talk about when it comes to relationships. But the best part about this whole thing is actually watching, like, Amber Heard's not a very good actress. Like, she she's literally smiling and laughing, talking to her lawyer. And then 5 seconds later, she puts on her sad face. She's like, and she sits there looking miserable and sad. And you go, you're a terrible actress. I mean, we all, we're watching you, right? We can see how you were just smiling and now you've gone to the sad face because the testimony requires it.
But Gareth, she was diagnosed. She was diagnosed with twin or bipolar disorder.
Listen, guys, it's unbelievable. And Gareth, you were talking earlier about fame, and I see somebody, Jake Lockley, in the comments says fame is a poison.
Yeah.
I just finished reading Viola Davis's memoir, Finding.
Oh yeah.
And she talks a lot about that. She became her career completely blew up and changed when she got the role on How to Get Away with Murder. Before that, she'd been Oscar nominated, she's got a Tony, she's got all of that stuff, right? But really, she was thrust into the forefront of world domination kind of fame with How to Get Away with Murder. Right. And she talks, and she was a working actress. I mean, she's a working actress all her life, from when she was 28, when she finished at Juilliard. And she talks a lot about that in her book. She talks a lot about how hard it is to be an actor, and that the work is bigger than the fame. That, if the actors and actresses that you see that are famous make up 0.01% of the number of people that are actually actors. And that if you're buying into the Instagram hype of what fame is and being famous rather than doing the work, you're going to be sorely, sorely disappointed, because not everybody becomes famous like that.
Right.
No, and
well, you can, also, what are you famous for? This is what it started to happen. I think the first people who were famous for
Paris Hilton.
Paris Hilton, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Paris Hilton, and then the Kardashians, and they also all did sex tapes, which helps because then you're at least famous for one thing. But there's stuff you don't want to be famous for. You don't want to be famous for shitting in someone's bed, for example. Like Rajesh says, I hear she's changing her name to Amber Turd. Really? Well, here, as predicted by The Simpsons, today is the day that Putin nukes somebody. They've been right once or twice already. I hope you are wrong, Parallel Parking, because if The Simpsons say something, it is usually true. So that's something to keep an eye on.
I really hope you're wrong, because already John Steenhuisen has told us about how this Ukrainian war is affecting the price of chips, the price of chips in tuck shops. I really hope you're wrong.
We need to know this.
The
fact-finding mission that John Steenhuisen went on is to find out how fluctuates the price of chips.
The last thing we need is chips to become more expensive.
So, Jake Lockley, who made the comment about fame earlier, he says they don't need to recast Amber Heard. They just need to cancel that stupid movie. We do not need any more new superhero movies. It's enough now. I think that I agree with that. I know that there are kids everywhere who are addicted to these movies, and I know that superhero movies are probably the only movies with any budget at the moment that actually get commissioned in Hollywood, because they know they'll sell at the box office.
This is what Martin Scorsese was talking about all those many years ago. That says
correct,
completely fucked up.
Yeah,
the way that movies are made and what kind of movies are made, and it's I know nobody likes to hear these things, but it is the industrial machine of chasing the profits, because that's what these superhero movies do. They break
merchandise machines. They know what attracts, and then they just reprint that over and over again.
The stereotypical, I remember this when we were in film school, one of the things that we learned is how the stereotypical exact audience that kind of a lot of the Hollywood blockbusters go for is a 14-year-old white male.
Yes.
So if it appeals to that person.
Right.
Really?
And
They're like, at the time there were 3 billion people in the world. There's like 3 billion people, and this is the narrow casting that we're looking at.
I mean, also, China have an outsized say in what movies go on, because if you can't sell your movie in China, you won't make as much money. So the whole of Hollywood will kowtow wherever they have to China. That's why you see the new Top Gun movie coming out, and Maverick doesn't wear a Taiwan patch on his jacket anymore. Little things. But China's like, yeah, if you want to put that movie in our cinemas, you can't have that thing. So Hollywood is not in charge anymore. And by the way, Phumi, if we ever listen to market research people about anything, we're going to get it wrong, because those market research people who said that the only people who we should listen to are 14-year-old white males. Imagine if we only listened to them when it came to politics. Imagine if we only listened to them when it came to what reading material we all should partake in. Don't do it. Don't do it, everybody. Let's keep a little bit more of a balance going on.
I know. I live with the 14-year-old black male, and it's horrendous.
So the irony here, Gareth, is that you're a 40-year-old white man telling people what not to do.
No, I know, but I'm thinking about how we should have a pluralism here, not a kind of even a commercial model that satisfies pure capitalism. It's like, you can make something that a lot of people want to buy. It leaves quite a lot of stuff that maybe isn't all popular, isn't all as commercially successful, but it leaves that stuff on the side, and I think we need that. We occasionally need that stuff. And I mean, I've always complained about things that are massively popular and that are kind of vacuous, and I'll put superhero movies into the same category. We were talking about Paris Hilton and the Kardashians and how mindless and dumb that whole thing is. So again, let's just keep some space for the good shit, which brings us to headlines in a very, very deft segment.
What a wonderful segue. Just like
so.
And now we're turning left.
Advocate Malisela Tefo, who's the lawyer who was dramatically arrested, you may remember, in court last week while representing 4 of the 5 men accused of the murder of Senzo Meyiwa, is no stranger to courtroom drama. He's endured the wrath of at least 2 judges over his conduct in court. In March, a judge warned him as a defense advocate for 2 co-accused in the Radovan Krejcir trial that he was going to be removed, and eventually did remove him. Judge Msimeki and Tefo he said he was also highly disruptive in court. It became clear that there would be no progress in the criminal trial while he was one of the court officials. The judge said in his judgment that he had never, during his decades of being a lawyer and later a judge, seen anyone behave in such a manner. So this guy, who, by the way, was arrested on another matter because he had failed to appear, he sounds to me like we have mechanisms for dealing with people like this in law, don't we? You can be struck from the role. You can be
why is he still part of the bar or the board?
What is the point?
Have you watched the documentary? Hold up. So did you watch the documentary? You spoke about this last weekend. We're going to do this. Did you see the documentary, Gareth?
No, still not.
Did you do your homework, Gareth?
Sorry.
You do your homework. You see people not like doing the background work?
Yeah. Sorry.
So, there's so many things happening with this case, and happening with all of the people involved in this case, because it's not just Malisela Tefo getting arrested. That has been the developments over the past couple of days. There is also the arrest of Chico Twala on Sunday, and the conspiracy theories. And I am one of the people that are on the side of the conspiracy theory that says, because Longwe Twala is the person that shot Senzo Meyiwa, Chico Twala has been using all his connections to try and get this thing taken care of. And what they did not contend with is they did not contend with social media, and social media has made their life hell. So now they're all backpedaling. And I think Advocate Tefo has has hit a couple of nerves in some of his kind of cross last week.
Mm-hmm.
And then very dramatically on Thursday, just before getting arrested. I mean, the man is not a fool.
Yeah.
He has a background in the police. He has many cases that he has won for his clients, and a lot of what he does is really he fights kind of the wrongful termination or the what do they call it, the
Unfair
targeting,
dismissal. Oh, yeah.
the targeting of what he sees as police people who are trying to do their job, who are trying to fight the corrupt system, whistleblowers in many cases. And he's done well for all of those people. So he's not a fool. He may not sound the way that a lot of people want people to sound. He's not like,
Yeah.
this flowing super English and he's not that guy. He's just he's a guy.
So just tell me quickly, because I haven't done my homework, but Thabo Pali says here, I'm sorry, but Chico Twala and the other people who were there the night Senzo was murdered are hiding something. Is that the conspiracy theory?
Dude, so I do want to say that from the 2 days after when the story came out of Senzo's shooting, I was like, what are these people doing? What are we talking about? There is only one person who had any motive to shoot anybody in that house. Not just, and I don't think it was intentional that he wanted to shoot Senzo. I think they just got into a fight. He is the only person who is an outsider of all the people that were in that house. And then watching the documentary, we're just like, we've seen enough crime and investigation, right?
Yeah.
We've listened to enough true crime podcasts. We're all just like, there are too many holes in the story. This guy can't keep a straight story. None of the timelines make sense. Why are you phoning your dad? Why is Chico being called? Why is Chico being called? Why is the head of the Hawks at the crime scene? Who cleans the crime scene? What the fuck? I'm just saying.
Yeah, now you see, now you've got me, you chastised me for not doing the homework, and then you got me excited to do it again. So I'm going to watch this thing. All right, just quickly, because there's so many stories in the news this morning, we want to try and get through as many as possible. So an illness kept former SAA board chairperson Dudu Myeni away from court on Wednesday, forcing a second postponement of her case relating disclosure of the identity of a protected witness at the State Capture Commission in 2020. So I don't know. This, Dudu Myeni was obviously going to pull the sick card. Shabir Sheikh used this when it came to sentencing in his trial. Jacob Zuma keeps using this. I reckon we've just got to say to people, we don't care how sick you are, we're wheeling you in. And if you die, you die.
You die. Wow.
I reckon. I mean, I don't care what you're suffering from. It can't be so bad that you can't acquit yourself in court. Yeah, come on.
Or at least let's get this is what COVID era. Let's get a Zoom camera in your comfortable hospital bed.
Right, I can do the show here from this B&B I'm staying at in Cape Town. Phumi can do it from her office. We can have this conversation. Why can't they do this in court? Hospitals have Wi-Fi. I don't see the problem. This is enough already. Anyway, so that's been going on. So Dudu Myeni again, she keeps on showing us that she can be worse than we thought she was. And Elon Musk has announced, this guy, I think he's the world's greatest troll. He really is causing endless amounts of trouble for people. I love the fact that he says that businesses and governments may have to pay for Twitter going forward, which is great. And they should, because they do use Twitter as their main broadcast arm now. Twitter is the public square. It's what governments, it's what prime ministers, presidents, kings, queens, dictators. Fikile Mbalula. I mean, I think Fikile should have to pay for the use of Twitter because he uses it so badly. Yeah?
No, me too. Me too.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. But obviously, there are going to be some people kicking and screaming about everything Elon does.
I saw a tweet the other day, and I was just like, Is somebody trolling Elon Musk here? Did he really troll the EFF?
I'm not sure. You can't
Did
really
you see
tell
that tweet? There
with
was a tweet going
with
around saying he wanted to
screenshots.
buy
You
the
never know.
EFF, but it had no viable assets. I was just like,
Nah, I call
no
BS on that.
intellectual property.
I don't think Elon is that into
This
South
guy is a
African.
troll.
I don't think
Yeah.
he's into South African politics to that level. But
Like he is a troll, but he wouldn't troll the EFF. Like,
speaking of the EFF, I saw a very sad story, and I know our politics sometimes precludes us from giving sympathy to those who we consider to be our ideological opposites and so on. And when someone on the extreme left or right has something tragic happen to them, I think a lot of people are forced to remember they're also people. I saw Godrich Gadi, his daughter, who went missing in Mpumalanga. They found her body. This poor girl, we don't know what happened, but she had a child with her. The child was found wandering around, and they eventually did find her body. And she was seemingly, she was killed. We obviously don't know much about the detail of that. But I just think, when I hear stories like this, that must be absolutely devastating to that family. We all know what loss feels like. And when a child goes missing, even if it's an adult daughter or son, to any parent, that's got to be the worst feeling. And horrible, horrible story for Godrich Gadi and his family to have to go through, right? Horrible.
Compounded by the performative justice of Biggie Cele.
Yeah, exactly. That guy. Imagine you're a person who's gone through something. Maybe you're a woman who's been raped. Maybe you're a man or a woman who's got a family member who's gone through something. There's been some crime that's been committed. Someone's been murdered or something. Some terrible, horrible, grievous thing has happened to you. And then this clown gets on TV, this Becky Taylor, and he goes, "Well, we are getting the criminals." No, you're not. It just makes you you're embarrassing yourself too by making it that much more embarrassing to have to see you parade yourself around on TV in that stupid hat you wear all the time, like you're some kind of cowboy or mafia boss.
Yeah, I think he fashions himself as a mafia boss. He carries himself. He's always got his goons around. I don't know. He's in a self-starring action
he's a
movie.
warlord.
Yeah,
that's who he was before he was given any kind of role of significance. That's who he was. He was a warlord. That's not a not known fact. This is well known fact.
Becky Taylor is like like the cliche African dictator with the many medals and all the accomplishments in the middle. He's that
banana republic.
Yeah, he seems like that to me.
But he thinks we all take him very seriously. He thinks we're all massively.
So
remember when he told us that we had to be in bed by 9:00 during the lockdown, like we were like we were his children. I was like, who the hell do you think you are?
Somebody has to tell him. Somebody has to tell him that all of these kind of like disappearances and murders, that they were all fueled by drinking. Like the witnesses saw the people with bottles of whiskey or something. He'll be incensed. He'll find them with immediate effect.
Well, a lot of people agreeing with you. Becky is an asshat, says Jake. I think that's about the best stuff. Of course, Carl brings something up. You talk about warlords, and Carl says, now Julius has said that if they find the killer of Godrich's daughter, there are no guarantees. Again, Malema demonstrates he thinks he's above the law.
I saw that. It was in News 24. It was an article on News 24 yesterday evening, I think.
Yeah.
I was like, the lawlessness we now live with.
Malema doesn't understand the power of his own words, which is like it backs to the kill the boer. Yeah, he does, says Phumi, which is very frustrating because I always say with Malema, it's either two things. Either he's too stupid, which is I don't think he is, to understand the effect of his words, or he's very smart that he is feeding this narrative, he's feeding this hate machine that we already have in this country. He plays on it so much because he will say this is not inciting violence or anything. But if someone, like if anyone is suspected and I'm a zealot of the EFF, I'm going to kill someone who I suspect is this because my leader told me so. But he doesn't understand that, or he thinks we don't understand that he is actually telling people to basically go commit hits, go be vigilantes, take the law into their own hands. As much as Bekikil is ineffective, but he's not helping the situation.
Oh, he knows. Oh, he knows. He knows.
Yeah, I think I'm with Phumi. He does know, and that makes it even worse, in my opinion, because if you're actually aware of the power of your words and it's so bad, and the things that happen are directly attributable to you, and you still go ahead and do it, that makes it worse. Then you truly are just an evil person. You realize the consequences, and you still go ahead.
And you don't care.
Right through. Yeah, you don't care.
Yeah.
And he doesn't.
Target DC says we should have Bekikil on the show on Collectomania. I almost said Kleptomania. Sort of the same.
No, that's the spin-off with the ANC members.
Yeah. We're going to do an ANC version of Collectomania called Kleptomania.
But you know what's really upsetting about him and his collection of hats is that probably about 6 months ago, the Sunday Times had a huge article with our current finance minister, Enoch Godongwana. And he has a collection of hats.
Oh my God, really?
He has a collection of hats. And this was the crazy. Like our finance minister in the biggest Sunday publication in Africa. And what is he talking about? His collection of fucking hats. Why?
And do these guys, do they think it makes them look good? I mean,
Well, a well-placed fedora has had a place in history, like swanky gentlemen.
Al Capone.
Yeah. Al Capone. I'm thinking, and all I can come up with is criminals, Frank.
Yeah, all I can come up with is like Al Capone.
All right, let me quickly tell you about this because we mentioned it last week, and we are hoping that you've had a chance to go and see the full video on YouTube of us talking about the new BMW iX. I shared my chat with Dr. Musa and Francisco Nwamba last week with the BMW iX. Phumi, you've got to see this. And everybody who hasn't seen it yet, please go and take a look. These guys are really funny. They're entertaining to watch, even if you're not into cars, okay? So you might not care about cars. You might not care about electric cars. I want you to go and see it anyway. And if you want to hear about the car, the BMW iX is incredible inside and out. You can go and see it now. Find it on our YouTube channel. That's the Cliff Central YouTube channel. Or you can find the links on all of our social media platforms. Go and take a look at it ASAP because we need you to see this video. We went to a lot of trouble to make it. We're very proud of it. We've got a great team of people who are working on more and more visual content for you in the Cliff Central envelope under our umbrella of stuff. And we want you to go and take a look. The more of this you support, the more of it we will do. And we would love to hear what you have to say about it. So do let us know. Go along to our YouTube channel and take a look. By the way, my background this morning is not fake. This is all actually happening. This beautiful picture behind me
is that a stadium over there?
It's Greenpoint. Let me show you.
Is that Greenpoint?
Yeah. Have a look.
No, in the other direction. Other way.
In the other direction.
Yeah. Now we see it.
There you go. See. So that's all happening behind.
Looking awesome.
It's going to be beautiful. So we're going to watch that develop over the next hour. It's another reason to be on the YouTube channel instead of just listening to the podcasts. But we don't mind if you do both. We're going to tell you what to do.
And also, people must like and subscribe.
Good point. Well put. Yeah. You know what? Pumi's going to give me homework. So she's going to say to me, I've got to watch the Senzo documentary. There are a whole lot of other things on Netflix I still have to watch. A bunch of podcasts I have to listen to. Then your homework is, and it's not.
I watched your IX video, Karen.
I know. I'm just listen. Here's the only other bit of homework we're asking you: like and subscribe. It helps us to get the numbers up. It helps us to be ranked by YouTube, and then the audience grows and grows and grows. So lots of very cool comments here about the sunrise behind me. Awesome view behind you, Gareth of Cape Town. That's from Marco. Jake saying it looks really nice. There's another reason to move to Cape Town. I'm not moving to Cape Town, but I have been. I have been down here twice.
Cape Town, yeah.
Twice in like 3 days.
So
yeah, it's been crazy.
So months ago when Sia was still here, I made a heartfelt request to Sia, and he, instead of like working towards the request I made, he decided to leave. He opted to leave. I was just like,
What was your request?
We need to talk to somebody at like Netflix, or now that Disney Plus is coming, we need to talk to somebody. I would totally love to put like a Barry Ronge. Is it Barry Ronge or Barry Ron?
Wrong.
And like
Huh?
wrong, and like like have a 3-minute kind of preview of all the stuff that's showing on TV.
Oh, you want to do that?
Yes, that would be awesome. I watch way too much TV to not like put it to good use.
So in other words, we're gonna have Phumi rating all the new material as it comes out. I mean, that's a lot of work. You want to do it, Phums?
Yeah, that would be amazing. Like somebody must pay us. We'll have like a 2-minute feature. We'll talk about all of the shit I'm watching, and like what's good and what isn't. We're always talking about what's happening in like on TV and in the movies and on the streaming channels. Come on, like content.
Yeah, look, I don't know. Hey, there's so much these days. It's very, very hard to kind of figure what you should be watching, and maybe you've got a point.
This is why you need like a service like that. Remember how Barry used to like at the back of the magazine in the Sunday Times?
Yes.
You'd like have like, and then there's all these movies coming out. You're not sure where you're going to spend your 20 rand. So you like read his reviews and kind of make a decision. Like I'm gonna, or are people just like letting the algorithms tell them what to watch?
I think that's what people are doing. Is they just get served. They just get served up this stuff, and you just go with whatever's on the algorithm and whatever whatever.
This is how you end up watching. This is how you end up watching like DC movies all the time and nothing else. Then you have no variety. Or like serial killer documentaries.
Yeah, and I don't want to watch that shit. It's like I once was sitting with friends of mine and they were talking about the price of nappies or something, and I'm scared to even talk about this now. No. So my phone, obviously, because it's always listening. So because it's always listening, my phone now suddenly is serving me with nappy ads. I kid you not. I'm like, I don't need that. I don't have children. You stupid algorithm. I don't have children. Why are you advertising this shit to me?
Oh, no. It's going to suggest all the dating sites with all the single women in Cape Town.
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, my God. Unbelievable.
I'm telling you, you need like some way to like add variety and spice to your life.
Well, I'm not a big TV viewer, and this is going to be horrifying to you, Phumi, but I said this the other day, and I actually received an email or two from people who were just disgusted. But I have not turned on my TV once this year in my house. It has not been on once. I've seen TV a couple of times at other people's houses, so I know that it still works.
It still exists. The concept of TV still exists.
Wow.
But I promise you, it's now the month of April, May, so almost halfway into the year, and I haven't turned my TV on once.
Okay, we can switch it up with like book reviews. I also read a lot, so we can
do that.
I'm done with book reviews because Phumi reads a lot of interesting stuff. Yeah,
dude, I'm out here. Clearly, it's also because I don't sleep very well, so there's lots of like time to do that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm with Bakabantu in terms of like if you could do book reviews, that would help me a lot. If, for example, I mean, I'm embarrassed to admit that I probably listen to more books now on audiobooks than I actually read them, and you get judged. People look at you and they go, "Oh, you're one of those, huh?" It's almost like it's like you're faking it instead of. So people are embarrassed and they're not necessarily upfront about the fact that they listen to books rather than read them. but that's what I'm doing at the moment. And
listen,
if you can short circuit that for me by pointing out things like this, maybe this Viola Davis book isn't my cup of tea, but there are a couple of others that you've mentioned over the last year or so that I have picked up and read. So people are already listening to you, Pums. You don't need to have a separate show.
Listen, audiobooks, the amount of time that we spend in our cars, that's where your podcasting and audiobooks will save you from the absolute dog show of what's happening in other radio stations. Like, I know people are listening to Cliff Central, right? So they think people are serving like good shit. Like, people are having conversations worth having. I have heard some conversations on the radio that were just like, y'all are talking about what now?
So the worst in commercial radio is for the worst.
It's so bad. So yesterday I caught an Uber from the airport to the B&B I'm staying in, and the guy who was driving the Uber was listening to one of the radio stations down here. And I kid you not, this is the discussion. They're like, are you the real you when you're drunk, or are you the real you when you're sober? And then they had a whole bunch of callers.
Call in. Let us know.
They must have set these people up. They had to be fake, because there's no one who wants to pick up the phone and like talk to these morons about this, And they call in. They're like, "Well, I think the real you is when you've had a couple of drinks, because the truth really comes out there." And I listened to this, going, "Who on earth is actually sitting through commercials?" And I kind of wanted to ask the Uber driver, "You enjoying this?" But I thought I didn't want to get into a whole conversation with him either, because I thought that was probably unnecessary. Some of this stuff is still going on. It's like 1993 on the radio. It's still the same as it's always been.
Jeez, it's quite harrowing. We had the radio on in the car the other day with Gareth, and we're just like, we have not listened to the radio in a long time.
Right.
Yeah, because he's now got a music personality, so he's always playing music in the car, which is great for me because it introduces me to new things,
music,
like K-pop. And it's like, what are they saying? What are they saying? What's this song about? But we're always listening to other stuff in the car.
I've just got to comment on this background. Just have a look at how pretty this is where I am. Oh my God. You see, this is why people from all over the world come to Cape Town. And you see the clouds rolling in over the sea there. That's amazing. That's if you keep going this way, you'll eventually get to Cape Town Harbor. No, sorry, this way to Cape Town Harbor, that way to Muli Point and then round to Sea Point. Beautiful, man. Oh, wow, this place. And this is also where I have to say we complain a lot about waking up early in the morning, especially on this show and especially in winter. And I know that, the audience here, we're not the people who listen to us live in the morning. They don't need convincing. They're all up early. They've probably got really important things to do. And we are just part of what gets their day going, which I'm always appreciative of. But there are lots of people who complain about waking up early. I love waking up early now, and I never thought I'd say that, just because of things like seeing this sunrise. And you get your day started before everyone else. You get all the news before everyone else.
So much more day. So much more day.
Right. And I reckon the best part of it is, if you can, you finish your day earlier because you started it earlier than everyone else, and you can maybe squeeze in a 20-minute nap in the afternoons, because that is the best thing ever. If you haven't used lockdown and the last 2 years to at least get a power nap in somewhere in the day, you've missed the whole point. Sorry. You've missed out. Big time.
So over the past...
Hey, sorry, listen. I just realized what the time is, Pums. I'm going to have to cut you short because it's 7:02. We've got the burning platform coming up next. I don't want to cut down on time. Sorry. Hold that thought, Phumi Mashiko. We'll be back just now. CliffCentral.com. It is 7:00 in the morning, bright and early on this beautiful Thursday.
This week on the AutoTrader podcast.
Do you have to register and license a car as soon as you buy it?
Well, because I know the answer to this, you've got a predetermined amount of time in order to make sure that car gets into your name. And the bottom line principle is there are two sides to car registration, and people often forget the other side. And the other side is car deregistration. So effectively, when someone sells a car,
Yes.
they'll send a document into the license department to deregister the car. Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Do you suffer from collectivism?
I started collecting when I was about 8 years old.
Do you have an obsession with objects?
I sort of got into collecting TV cars.
Are you a fanatic? A devotee? Are you someone exhibiting enthusiasm or strong passion?
When lockdown hits, when everyone was kind of bored at home, they started Googling, like, what are these things worth these days?
Cliff Central dispenses a weekly dose of Collectomania. Join me as I talk to compulsive collectors. Fascinating.
The frame's total value is probably about 12,000 Rand.
Possibly a little weird.
I developed this infatuation with the Statue of Liberty.
Collectomania, Mondays on the Gareth Cliff Show. Brought to you by SA Gold Coin Exchange and The Scoin Shop. Yes, indeed. CliffCentral.com. It is time for the Burning Platform, which comes to you every Thursday morning. It's our chance to catch up on all the big stories that are going on in the news, to see what's happening in current affairs, to speak about all the stories that matter the most to you and have the biggest effect on what's going on in your life. Oh, Pums, I'm getting some feedback from you.
From me?
Yeah, I think if you just turn it down a little bit, then we'll sort it out. Phumi Mashiko is in Joburg. She's in her offices. I'm in Cape Town, and got a couple of meetings here today and then heading back this evening. It's a lot of flying to Cape Town in the last week or two, and it's been quite pleasant. I mean, I didn't fly with any fancy airlines. I didn't do anything any fancy way. You have to wear your mask, but it's really not the most unpleasant thing, and it's only a 2-hour flight, so it's been an absolute pleasure. Both ways on the weekend, and then this way down here, and hopefully on the way back also, no major problems. I've noticed, though, that flights are picking up. There are some people who are complaining that there are not enough flights going between Johannesburg and Cape Town. The flights are all full, so maybe there's space for more.
Fly Safi ran a big digital promotion saying that they're like 8 Rand flights or something like that.
Yeah.
Yesterday. And I'm interested to know if anybody got an 8 Rand flight.
I didn't, and I did fly with them.
Did you fly? No, but they were only on sale yesterday, the 8 Rand flights.
Oh, no. Then I should have waited before I booked. That was stupid. Okay, so a couple of people complaining about the app audio playing different things at the same time, so we'll try and figure that out. But I do want to see if we can get Kanthan on. Kanthan, how's it? Oh, we're hearing very
He's
strange
the one with the feedback.
You reckon? I'm going to kick him out and maybe he can come back in. Let's see if we can get him on.
Yeah.
Kanthan, of course, a returning co-host of the Burning Platform. We haven't seen him in a while. We only get to speak to him now because he has become the parent in charge of dropping the kids at school. You know that. So normally, unless there's school holidays, we can't have Kanthan on, right, Pums?
Oh, and we miss him dearly. I miss him dearly. I'm glad he's coming on today because of the stuff that's going on. And also,
well, where do we begin with today's Burning Platform? Let's just start the ball rolling. We've got State Capture Report Part 4. Pums, have you already looked at it? Because I know you're a nerd when it comes to this stuff.
Dude, I downloaded it when it came out last week Thursday after the show, and started reading it. And because we had a long weekend, I was quite keen that I'm going to read the whole thing finished. But I must say that probably by kind of Saturday, halfway through the day, I had to stop reading it because it was making me feel down. It was making me feel like, oh, this is it's so much. It's so crazy. And I am clear that what we need now we need the kind of leadership that is not going to be afraid at the NPA, at the political level, that is not going to be afraid to pull an Erdogan here in this country. That's what we need now. We need an Erdogan type of kind of cleaning up where
are you asking for a dictatorship, Pums?
No. In that he had 36,000 people arrested and charged in this. His reasons for doing that was ridiculous because he thought they were mounting a coup against him. But we need that kind of scale of kind of arresting, charging, and hauling people through the justice system, because the scale at which the institutions of this country have been broken is so deep and far and wide and insidious. That's what we need. We need it at the NPA because they have got to build the cases that stick. But also we need it at the political level where there is no interference.
Well, while we're waiting for Kanthan to join us, I hear what you're saying about Erdogan actually charging a bunch of people. I read the most fascinating thing the other day about Mohammed bin Salman, who's the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And there's an author or a journalist who's been working, I think, with the New York Times on a story about him for a long, long time. They've eventually put together a documentary. He's actually had interviews with Mohammed bin Salman. Most amazing thing happening in Saudi Arabia. So what he did, Phumi, and they've also been, overwhelmed by corruption over the years, because I mean the average budget in Saudi on any given year goes to paying off a whole lot of princes to live like princes, and there's an enormous network of patronage and of stupidity and of corruption that goes on in Saudi Arabia. And Mohammed bin Salman, who's taking over he's not the king yet, his father's the king, but his father's in his 80s and he's kind of having a slow retirement. Mohammed bin Salman booked out, I think it was the Four Seasons in Riyadh, and he sent everybody who has had their hand in the till, valued business people, friends of the family members, princes, brothers, they all got put in the Four Seasons hotel, right? They got, nice meals sent to their room service. There's a pool, there's fitness facilities, but they cannot leave the hotel. And what he did is he locked them all in there and said, here's the deal, guys. You either pay back 90% of everything you've stolen, and we know what you've stolen. I've done an audit. I know what the facts are. Either you come to me and you sit down with me, you say, Prince MBS, I'll give you back 90% of everything, my ill-gotten gains, and then we can make a deal. Or else I'm going to Khashoggi you. And he's had the most incredible success. I mean, again, this is extrajudicial. This is not a country. This is an absolute monarchy. This is not a country that runs. It doesn't run on democratic principles and rule of law and all of that stuff. It's basically he's a strong man, and he's come in and he said, if you don't give back the money you've stolen, I'm going to get it from you anyway. And it's worked because all of these guys who've had their hands in the till have suddenly said, all right, let's make a deal, including this one businessman whose name eludes me for the moment. But apparently it's been fantastically good. It's really worked.
And this, for the longest time has been my complaint about Shamila Batoyi and her position, is what it does is it sends shockwaves through the system, right? You don't have to arrest everybody, but high profile arrests and convictions, what they do is they become a deterrent.
Yeah, shot across the bow.
Now people are scared. Like people are afraid that their day is coming. But it's got to be.
Let's add Kanthan in here and see. There he is, and it seems like we've got you loud and clear, Kanthan. Go ahead.
Well, the question is whether my audio is actually working properly. Can you guys hear me?
It is. There's a little bit of almost an echo, like a doubling up of it, but otherwise we're good.
All right. I have no idea where it went wrong this morning, but I haven't used it for ages. So go.
It sounds like you've almost developed a stutter. It's very funny. At least we can hear you. So, Kanthan, welcome back. I don't know if you heard what I said about Mohammed bin Salman and what Phumi was saying about Erdogan in Turkey, and you probably can't believe that you're back here talking to us, and the name Shamila Batoyi has come up, and we've still made no progress, even though the last time we spoke to you was months ago.
Absolutely right. And we are unlikely to have any progress simply because of the fact that look, I assume that what Shamila Batoyi is doing has been working on the assumption that she needs to wait for Zondo to finish. And at the point at which Zondo's reports come out and launch big blitz. Now, I see you shaking your head in disbelief, and I'm all shaking my head in disbelief. But I'm saying that this is plausible deniability. So, and from that perspective, that it's got nothing to do with in reality they're up to scratch. Look, here's a way of looking at what the actual answer is, that she is able to find evidence that is to actually convict people. Has thought ever occurred?
Yeah, it has occurred to me. What's occurred to me also is that you sound like that's all, folks, from the Looney Tunes. What I'm going to do, Kanthan, I'm going to kick you out, come back in, and let's see if it sorts out the problem, because I don't want you sounding like a cartoon character. It's very hard to take things seriously.
Why don't you?
Wait a second. Let's see if we can get him back. Sorry.
So what I do agree with what Kanthan is saying is that maybe she's unable to construct cases that will stick, charges that will stick, and cases that will stick. But I think there are precedents to how those things happen. Think back to in New York City when Giuliani was the state's attorney, and the mob was taking over the city. Essentially had New York in its grips. Yeah. One of the things that the district attorney, Giuliani, did was they went to a law professor at one of the Ivy League universities, and they essentially brought on board an independent person to help them construct a case that will stick. Now, you know that eventually, he wasn't caught for kind of being a mob boss, but it was really around the taxes and around his business interests and the fraud happening there, that they were able to ensnare them. And what happened, and again, sending shockwaves through the system, is what happened when they started prosecuting those people around those things. What it did was, people ran scared. And there was that high profile murder of somebody who was supposedly in the streets of New York. Guys,
do you remember when Hamilton Ndlovu came to prominence just a little while ago? Because he stupidly went and bought like 16 cars that were all over R1 million. And the way we found out about that was SARS, right?
Yeah.
So again, SARS which seems to be the only government department that really does function very, very well and has its shit together. Sars should be the first point of entry for Shamila Batoy and for everyone else in the NPA to make their move. And as you say, Phumi, you can get them on a tax charge. Just lock them up. We don't care what it's for.
I mean, there are so many different laws that have been broken by so many people. Some of them, they're not even aware that they are breaking these laws. And that's what Shamila's got. She's got to be able to think a little bit laterally on some of these things. It's not going to be as straightforward because Zondo said this or somebody came and said this and that. We have got to find a way where we're thinking creatively around what needs to happen so that the end result is what people need to see to understand that there is still a rule of law in this country.
Well, while we're waiting for Kanthan, I want to talk to you about the judicial situation in South Africa. There's this huge Supreme Court case in America, but in our own courts, we've now got a Chief Justice in Chief Justice Zondo, who was the former Deputy Chief Justice, and they're going to make Judge Maya, who I said I was really impressed by, during the hearings at the JSC. She really was a very formidable and I thought extremely strong candidate for Chief Justice. It turns out they're looking at her for Deputy Chief Justice, which would be a very good move, don't you think?
Look, and the parallels, what we're seeing in the States and what's happened here. And I'm so sad Kanthan's not on this, is because
we'll get to it. Don't worry.
What we're seeing, what I am seeing with what's happening in SCOTUS is what happens when politics and political positioning takes over in an environment where it shouldn't. And I think what we still have here in South Africa is we still have a relatively independent judicial system.
Right.
There's some murmurings of some people who, and it's one of the places where I think the cancer that has been the ANC's mayhem hasn't gotten there yet, but almost everywhere else. And this is what you see when you read the Zondo reports, is you see how much the tentacles of the governing party have gotten into, they've gotten in the way of things happening in this country, and we're still lucky that part of our system has been hedged.
Well, more or less. I mean, we had our misgivings about poor old Mogoeng when he first came in, and there's still people who thought that he wasn't necessarily the best Chief Justice, but he ended up at least doing a few heroic things for the independence of the judiciary. Kanthan, I know you want to talk about America and their situation with Roe versus Wade at the moment, especially what's going on around the case, not just the case itself. But do you have any comments on the state capture report, part 4, which has been published, Judge Zondo's work, the fact that he's now our Chief Justice, the fact that Judge Maya, who was so impressive at the Judicial Service Commission hearings, is likely to be our Deputy Chief Justice? Any comments on any of that?
Look, the only thing that comes to mind in terms of going through, and I've only done a preliminary reading so far, guys, so just bear with me here, but I note with interest that there's hardly, I don't see any reference made to the part played by McKinsey. So it looks like they've actually been allowed to exit this entire thing scot-free. And carry on.
How is that possible? Because I have to ask you, McKinsey's hands are filthy. And McKinsey,
absolutely, yes.
All over the world, it seems that all these people do is get paid a huge amount of money by governments to involve themselves in some of the most corrupt activities. And what I'm obviously saying with great care and thought, because this is a powerful corporation that will sue if they believe that's not true. They won't sue because in South Africa, their hands are so deep into the till and they're so dirty that they've actually been trying behind the scenes to exit quietly from the stage left without anyone noticing. Kanthan, it's not possible for them to do that, though, is it? Everybody already knows how dirty they are.
Yes, but Zondo clearly thinks otherwise, and so that's part of the issue that I have. The second part of the problem that I have with the Zondo report is that there is nothing that in any way fingers our president. Because remember, he was sitting at the right hand of Jacob Zuma for the entire time. And we don't see anything that actually puts him in the hot seat at any level. So these are the two issues that I have off the top of my head.
Okay.
This is why I say when you go back to the question of does Shamila Batoy possibly not have any grounds on which to actually go after people based on Zondo? And I think the answer to that is yes, because of the fact that she's not able to do anything without in some way incriminating the current crop of leadership.
Yeah.
Oh, Kanthan, but you know everything currently, whether it is mainstream media, whether it's political analysts, everything currently is constructed around protecting and treating with kid gloves our president. Everything. Nobody criticizes the man, right? People were shocked that when he arrived at the May Day celebrations in Rustenburg, he was booed off the stage. I was like, yeah, that's how people are feeling, and they don't care. But that was hardly made the news. I mean, it was like a two-second clip, if any, and then quickly moved on.
Yeah, embarrassing, right? I mean, this shows you how far we've come. I don't think I can remember an occasion where an ANC president, at May Day in particular,
it happened to Jacob Zuma.
Booed off the stage. No,
it happened to Jacob Zuma.
Really?
He wasn't booed off the stage. Jacob Zuma did not run. Jacob Zuma stood his ground and just simply got his goons to get everyone together. But Cyril goes running off and then he apologizes.
Yeah, well, he tried to make
and he promises to make things right.
I saw him try to kind of sidestep this whole thing by saying, the people are upset and we hear the complaints of workers. And I've got to say, it's a stupid move for Cyril Ramaphosa, particularly in a place like Rustenburg, where the memory of Marikana is so fresh in people's minds.
It's time. I think it's time that we let go of Workers' Day. We have very few people who are workers left in our country.
That's a good
idea.
The
unemployment rate is so high. There's so many people.
We turn it into unemployment day, and we use it as a day to try and find people jobs. I don't know.
I mean, it's time.
Good suggestion. All right, so let's stick around with South Africa for just a little bit longer, because there are a couple of other stories, and then I know, Kanthan, you're just itching to get onto the Ukraine. You want to talk about America, so we'll do that in a second. But are we still in COVID regulation time? A lot of people are asking this. Apparently, we've got a 30-day transitional COVID-19 measure thing, which expired at midnight last night. So technically now, we're out of mask wearing and sanitizing and all the bullshit, right? We don't have to do that anymore.
I heard an announcement by our health minister that there is an extension to the period of consultation, I think, till the 5th of July.
Yes, there was a renewal of the mask mandate, as I understand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why? What for?
Because once people have gotten a taste of power, they don't let go of it, Gareth. We've had this discussion on this show, remember?
Well, I'm willfully being ignorant here, because I need it to be explained again and again, because it doesn't make sense to me that we're still stuck in this stupidity. I saw it was probably the Minister of Health saying something about how, well, there's another wave, but what we haven't calculated, and what hasn't been put into the machine here, is that wave after wave, the wave gets less and less deadly and more transmissible. And yes, there are people getting sick. But guess what? It's winter coming up. There are going to be people getting sick anyway. And we should just get back to things. I don't understand this. The dumbest thing of all is being on a plane and having to wear a mask, where you actually have these HEPA filters and probably a better airflow than you do in anyone's house or office anywhere in the world. So I think it's just time we started disobeying the law here. I really think civil disobedience is called for.
I'm in favor of civil disobedience, Gareth, and for the longest time I've been saying that what we need to do is #defund the bastards.
Yeah.
which means don't pay taxes. I think the Mars stuff is kind of pissant. We get so caught up with the fact that they infringing on our freedoms at the most petty level possible that distracts us from the rampant looting that continues going on. And take a look at yet again we have load shedding kicking in for the next period, and it's absolutely true. We're going to be living with this for the next 3 or 4 years, no matter what they may say. And that is the level. I'm not.
It's worth
because I'm off grid. Yes.
Yeah, we never have to worry about Kanthan and doing the show with us in the morning without electricity ever again, because you are now completely off grid. Is that right?
I'm almost completely off grid. My oven is not connected to my solar system.
Okay, and, but everything else.
Because ovens eat a ridiculous amount of power.
Yes, but it makes for good food, Phumi. You know this.
I know. This is like, I don't know how to get a gas oven. Like, that's what I mean. Ovens are ridiculous.
Gas ovens are the most pathetic things possible. I lived in the US for a number of years, and I used a gas oven, and it's horrendous. You do not want to deal with a gas oven.
Mm-mm.
You need a gas cooker top, and you need an electric oven. And yes.
Well, you see, that's another reason people come to the Burning Platform is for kitchen advice. This is very important. All right, so Kanthan, I know you can't wait to go overseas. So let's talk about the Ukraine, because we actually haven't touched on this for a couple of weeks now. And a lot of people have just kind of lost interest. The news cycle moves on very quickly. We know that that people tend to be really fickle about these things. What's actually going on there? John Steenhuisen made a visit. A lot of people think this is pure political theater. They're not impressed. The picture of him standing next to a broken water pipe, and he's talking about how tuck shops aren't going to be able to afford chips for the kids at school because they don't have cooking oil. But South Africa, the only comments we've made are comments to the effect that we are either not choosing a side, or if we're going to choose a side, it's going to be Russia. I saw the Pope said some interesting things. It's got him labeled a conspiracy theorist. I saw Noam Chomsky, of all people, the hero, the darling of the left, saying that this is not as cut and dried as the narrative that we're being sold by the mainstream media about how Ukraine is being prevailed upon by the evil Russians. And now I see President Lula, who's recently out of jail and about to start Chapter 2. He famously featured on Time magazine. He's in the news saying, another prominent lefty, who's been saying, actually, guys, this whole Russia-Ukraine thing is not as easy as people seem to think it is to read. So what's your take?
Well, can we first agree that if you look at South Africa as a whole, the question of which side you fall on in terms of whether you support Russia or whether you support Ukraine is very much determined by race. Can we agree on that? Can we agree on that?
Well, what do you mean? Because
if I tend to not actually voice opinions on any of our social media platforms around which side I fall in terms of this divide, because it is a question of nuance. But if you look in terms of the narrative that gets put out primarily by white commentators, and so let's put Peter Bruce at the top of that pile, and he's very much Team Ukraine, and then take a look at Saint Letze, who on a regular basis tweets footage of from the Russian side, and he's very clearly Team Russia. And go through social media and take a look at it, and you'll find that overwhelmingly the people who are coming out in support of the Ukrainian side tend to be your white commentators.
Okay.
And so that's an observation, and I'm just putting it out there. And clearly there's no scientific study that goes behind this. But it cuts to the chase of something that I've been trying to say for the longest time, that the Ukraine conflict now has become probably the single most divisive issue in this planet. So if you use that as a starting point, that should immediately be giving us warning signals that things are not as clear-cut as we would otherwise be believing. So we need to look at this from two perspectives. The first perspective is whether Russia has invaded Ukraine and whether they have a right to be there. Everyone says Russia does not have a right to be in the Ukraine right now.
Mm-hmm.
But remember that the process that went in place before Russia actually moved in was in keeping with the UN rules. Because the first thing that happened was that the Russian parliament acknowledged the independence of the two Ukraine republics. So that's
Okay.
Donetsk and Luhansk.
All right.
At the point at which they acknowledged that, there was then a formal request for military assistance from those independent republics. And I say independent republics in quotes because obviously whether or not you recognize them depends on which side of this divide you fall. And at that point, Russia went in. So certainly in terms of the historical precedents around the UN rules, Russia has been doing this legally, no matter what we might say to the contrary. Now, from a moral perspective, whether that's an appropriate thing to be doing, I don't know the answer to that. But what is true is that ever since the signing of the Minsk Accords, and I assume that most of us are familiar with what the Minsk Accords are all about.
Yep.
But I'll just refresh your memory very quickly. The Minsk Accords were signed some years ago, basically guaranteeing the autonomy of those two republics within Ukraine. So it wasn't saying these are going to be independent states. The Minsk Accords was basically holding the government in Kiev accountable for ensuring that there was a reasonable degree of autonomy for those two republics. And the starting point around that reasonable degree of autonomy was recognition of the Russian language as an official language in those territories. Because where this conflict started was at the point at which Kiev, after the US toppled the government in Kiev in 2014, then removed Russian as an official language. And if you want to touch people on their studio, that is the quickest way to actually do so. So the Minsk Accords basically were holding Kiev accountable to ensure that there's a reasonable degree of autonomy for those two republics and that that Russian would be actually protected. Instead, what happened was that Kiev has been waging a war against the two republics. Since 2014 up until now, there's been systematic shelling of civilian areas. Those places were in an absolute state of devastation. Now, you've had a situation where people kept trying to pull Russia into the discussions with the Ukraine.
Yeah.
And Russia kept saying, no, this is an internal matter for Ukraine to actually resolve. But Ukraine consistently continued to bomb these areas. Now,
You know,
we don't talk about this.
No, we're not even hearing much about this. Obviously, it's not. It doesn't suit some people's, in inverted commas, narrative to be talking about this stuff.
So,
Yes.
and speaking about not hearing about it, I mean, Kanthan, you talk about Sintletse on the one side and Peter Bruce on the other. One of the things that has also become glaringly obvious in this particular conflict is how much of a role state-controlled media plays. So where we sit, we have almost no way of knowing exactly what is happening on the ground, because depending on what media you're looking at.
What do you mean, Phumi? We've got John Steenhuisen wandering around the Ukraine as our fact-finding mission continues.
No, absolutely. And again, even his fact-finding mission as he's walking around top billing style in Kiev and other parts of we're just, the things that he is saying and the views that he is giving us simply mirror exactly what Kanthan is talking about. So we have no way of knowing what the truth may even look like. And we hear on the one side that Russia is being devastated left, right, and center. We hear on the other side that Kiev is being devastated. But in reality, what we don't know is we don't know what the intentions of any of the special military exercises that are being exercised by Russia are. Does he really want to? Does he want to get to Kiev? Does he want to take over Kiev? Is he just creating havoc in that country? Because one thing we do know for sure is that where the Ukraine is now is their economy has been devastated, and havoc has been wreaked on that country. If you look at the number of people who have left Kiev, even if Russia were to withdraw now, how long would it take them to rebuild their economy and rebuild industry in that country for them to be, a viable country and an aggressor to the two regions of Luhansk and Donetsk?
So can I ask both of you? Let me ask both of you: to whose advantage is it to keep this going? If the conflict continues, who scores? Is it more to Putin's advantage and Russia's advantage, or to NATO and the Ukraine if it continues to be pressed?
Well, I'll tell you how it ends. And this is going to be very unpleasant for most people. Mariupol has already been taken. Mariupol is never going back to Ukraine. Let's be very clear about that.
Yeah.
And once Mariupol is, once the steel plant in Mariupol has been completely purged, and the reason why those people are being held out there right now is that there's been credible independent pointers showing that they are both UK and France military advisors who are embedded with that lot holding out the steel plant. And that is why they are refusing to surrender. Because at the point at which they are forced to come out of there, it will be made clear that this has in fact been a proxy war on behalf of NATO. So, and Putin is doing the appropriate thing. He says, we're not going to waste our resources storming the steel plant. We're just going to surround them, and we're not going to let a fly get out of there. And
so it's like an old medieval siege.
It's an old medieval siege. That's exactly what it is. And eventually they're going to run out of food, and they're going to have to come out of there. And Mariupol is thereafter going to be part of the Donetsk Republic, and it's never going to go back to Ukraine. Once Putin has finished with Mariupol, he's going to go after Odessa. And he is
very important strategic asset, that too, because it's the only Ukraine port in the Black Sea, right?
Exactly. And he's going to take Odessa, and Odessa too is never going to go back to Ukraine. So Ukraine is going to become a landlocked country, comprising Kiev and parts to the north, and parts across to the east. You might very well have a situation where countries like Romania and Poland will take advantage of the opportunity and try to claim some pieces of land from Ukraine, because remember that that's been a point of dispute going back to way before the Second World War.
And of course, Poland has scored massive points by taking in so many refugees. So they'll claim that in return for their magnanimity in taking all these refugees, maybe they deserve some land.
There'll be all of that stuff, absolutely. But what is absolutely true is that Ukraine is going to be a pale shadow of its former self. All of the predominantly Russian-speaking areas, and of which Odessa is one, by the way,
yes,
are going to be within the ambit of those republics. And I assume that what will happen at some point is that those republics will then ask Russia to be annexed in exactly the same way as happened in Crimea, and they will become part of the Russian Federation as well. Now, when I say stuff like this, very importantly, okay, this is not what I want to happen.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear about this. But what's very clear to me, this is the way it's going.
Because you've got economic interests in America.
Yeah, but okay, so it's not just going to end with a treaty, though. It's not just going to end with, oh, well, everything's fine now. We've sorted out the territorial disputes and the ethnic and cultural and the Minsk Accords disputes. Of course, it's going to have a massive hangover effect. And this is what's interesting to me when it comes to the rest of the world. Because if we see the polarization you're talking about, if you mentioned, Kanthan, white journalists and white people in South Africa on one side, and on the other side, largely black journalists, black people, with a very different point of view on Russia and Ukraine. Ultimately, this is going to be an issue in America too. We see that slowly the left and right are separating out on Ukraine and Russia. How do you think ultimately this is going to affect the EU? How do you think ultimately it's going to affect NATO? And what do you think the real world consequences are going to be for America in terms of involving themselves in this?
The real world consequences for America are that they are already technically in recession. Because remember that they are currently optimistically putting economic growth at 3.2% down from, which is substantially down from where it was. Right. But remember also that inflation in the US is running at the highest level that it has been for 41 years.
Yep, since the Carter administration, and
yes.
Now two consecutive quarters of downward economic activity. That is technically a recession, whether Joe Biden keeps
absolutely right.
The Russian price hikes or not. This is self-inflicted.
Yes. So for the poorest of the poor in the US, you've had a drastic drop in terms of living standards over the past 6 months, and that's going to continue. So let's just push the US aside for now and take a look at what has been happening in Europe. Now, the US has been pushing every single country to send as much of their arms as they possibly can across to the Ukraine.
Yeah.
Now, those arms are not getting replenished automatically. Mm-hmm. So now what do you think happens if Russia decides to attack? Do they have arms to defend themselves? The answer is no.
Well, so far also, we've got to say that Russia has been underwhelming. I thought this thing would be over in 3 weeks when they started it. And it seems Russia's had to do a little bit of maneuvering. And there've been a couple of quite embarrassing defeats around Kiev.
But that is based on what you think they set out to do.
Okay. So there's
That's based on what you think they set out to do.
Okay. So there's an information war going on here too. And there's deliberate miscommunication. Can we use this time, because I don't want us to run out of it, to just turn our attention to America again, where disinformation and misinformation are now being weaponized? It's almost Orwellian. Joe Biden announced the the institution of essentially what is a Department of Truth. As part of Homeland Security, a Ministry of Truth has been established in the United States where they will be handling misinformation and disinformation. This is a very scary idea, and people use they use the term Orwellian, in my opinion, far too much. But this, if anything, in the last 20 years can be described as Orwellian. This is it. A group of political appointees who will decide what is and isn't essentially something worth criminalizing, just based on whether or not someone agrees with you or not. And everything is partisan, regardless of what Jen Psaki says in the White House, right?
We had that during the apartheid era. Out here, Gareth, you might recall we had a bureau for information.
Correct.
And that was exactly what its role was. It was everything before it got put out into the media, it had to be vetted by the Bureau for Information. So that was put in place at the time that I escaped the country in '86. With the state of emergency, there was rampant censorship in place, and the Bureau for Information would decide whether or not something could be published.
So obviously this is a full-on, and by the way, they never needed to establish this while Twitter was friendly. Now that Twitter might become a little more objective, it's a problem. So of course we need a Department of Misinformation.
Well, fortunately, if you look in terms of what has been happening with the US markets, the likes of Facebook also have taken a massive pounding in terms of their share prices. Right. So the ability to actually weaponize these platforms, given that they are performing as poorly as they are right now, is actually going to be quite diminished. But you see, the more interesting thing for me is that if you look in terms of this leak that took place purportedly from the US Supreme Court around, and the leak really is not because, look, I think all of us are aware that when you have decisions that get taken by a bench of judges, whether it's our, full bench out here or the Supreme Court of Appeal or going all the way to the Constitutional Court, you'll generally have a person who will come up with an opinion that is meant to sway the majority of people. And then you'd also have another person who will come up with minority opinions. And these are never set in stone. So, and in the case of the US, you'll generally have a scenario where the most extreme person will come up with a particular viewpoint, and then it goes through a process of actually getting hammered into shape. And eventually, you'll end up with a consensus. Or if you don't end up with a consensus, then you'll have a majority view and a minority view. So the situation that we have right now, and I made this point a couple of days ago when this leak came out, that the Democrats did not have an issue on which to hang the forthcoming midterm elections. And so suddenly what happens is you have a leak of an opinion, and the narrative for the next months is that if you do not stand up against the Republicans, your reproductive rights are going to go.
Convenient.
And it really is as simple as that in terms of what's happening right now. So the question of whether Roe versus Wade is under threat or not, I think, is peripheral to the issue. We have not yet seen what decision is going to come out from that court.
That's such an interesting point. I mean, if the Democrats, this is their silver bullet, right? This is the opportunity that they haven't had up to now. They've got no good news. There's no story to tell. And now suddenly they've got a reason that their base will get really fired up, and it has to be Roe v. Wade.
Well, absolutely. But I think that they actually misunderstand the extent to which this is likely to be an issue of significance for the majority of voters, given the overall decline in standards of living, the overall plummeting of real incomes, the soaring price of fuel at the petrol pumps. I think that those are going to be the bread and butter issues that are going to sway this election, rather than Roe versus Wade. I think that
What do you say, Phumi? Sorry, she was going to say something and I interrupted.
I think one of the things that we're also kind of not paying enough attention to is we spoke about this, Kanthan. That's why I'm so glad you're here today. With the outcome of the last election in the US, that what you're also seeing is you're seeing an overall kind of decline of the way that the world also views America and its democracy and who they are and their standing in the world. And this is when you look at how NATO and Russia is going for them, when you look at how essentially their stagflation, when you look at the standard of living for most Americans, all of that stuff is the dying of an empire. And I wonder if we should look at it as many people before us have. Is it because of their ill-fated Afghanistan campaign?
I don't know. I mean, it's also, Gore Vidal predicted the fall of the American empire back in the 60s and 70s. But I will say, and I want to hear what you two think of this, that this is also the decline and fall of the last couple of years of the Democratic Party and all of their ideals coming crashing down. I mean, this is where, as I said earlier this morning, reality and narrative meet. And unfortunately, reality always wins. There are plenty of things that are going on at the moment that are just outside of the control of America's political elite. And they don't like that. And unfortunately for them, the average American is seeing it that way too, which is why they're going to be shellacked at the polls. I mean, don't you agree about that, Pums?
Well, and again, what happens in America, and this is why the Democrats, historically, they do well when they can get people out to vote, is because they don't vote. They have a very similar situation to what we have here, where people just don't show up to vote. When they think everything is kind of fine, they don't show up to vote. And the people who do show up to vote, you say the average American, but it is, America's conservative side comes out to vote far more often than the Democrats or the liberal side.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Barack Obama managed to get the biggest voter turnout in history. I mean, somehow Joe Biden improved on that in the last election, maybe just because people really hated Donald Trump. But they are getting their just desserts now. I mean, Kanthan, what would your comment be on that? The Democrats are seeing the floor fall out under them. Joe Biden's approval ratings are the lowest of any president in recorded history at the moment.
You see, the more crucial question is who else do they have that is able to step into that spotlight and become the next Democrat contender for president?
Mm.
And it's going to be almost impossible for them to come up with someone appropriate, because remember that what the Democrats have done in the last election is that they actually smacked down every single person who might actually have done something reasonable in terms of their party. And Bernie Sanders was the single biggest example of that.
Yeah.
You know, if anything, right now, the best thing that the Democrats could do is to actually go for the likes of Bernie Sanders. You know, my personal favorite would have been Tulsi Gabbard, but they insisted on pushing her out simply because she wasn't in favor of doing the entire military intervention in other countries thing, because of the fact that she's actually served in the military, still serves in the military for that matter. So,
but it also highlights a worldwide failing of the left. There are just no new ideas on that side of the political spectrum.
Yep.
There are no new ideas. There are no charismatic leaders, not just in America, all over the world. There are no charismatic leaders. There are no new ideas, and they really are not giving any solutions to the problems that we are all facing every day.
Well, let's go back to Europe very briefly, because now you've got a situation where Biden is trying to persuade Finland and Sweden to sign up for NATO. And I think this is an extremely stupid thing to do. Because when Putin has drawn his red line and he said, I do not want a further extension of NATO up onto my borders. And rest assured, yeah.
And this is why the Pope's utterances have been viewed kind of askance, because that's what he's saying. He's just saying, guys, this man is telling us to get our nose out from his face. And yet there's still this kind of push that's happening at NATO, where they keep kind of pushing the envelope, pushing their luck.
Well,
And he said
absolutely right. And the case of Finland, I wrote a fairly detailed history fairly recently that went into the relationship between Finland and Russia. And remember that Finland fought on the side of the Nazis in World War II, which is why they ended up losing a significant amount of chunk to Russia in the first place.
Yeah.
Now, if you have this, so remember Putin's two main goals that he's been talking about with regard to the Ukraine. He's been talking about demilitarization, which means that he's pretty much taking out every single military facility that he can.
Mm-hmm.
So the supply lines, for example, in the West, that have allowed the shipment of arms to come in from Europe into the Ukraine, he's been bombing those and taking them out.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter now the extent to which the rest of NATO is able to get arms into Ukraine. The arms mean absolutely nothing if you don't have fuel that's able to actually, if you can't fuel the tanks, if you can't fuel the jeeps, if you can't actually transport the weapons to where you want them to be. And more importantly, if you don't have food to be able to feed the troops that are going out there. So, but Gareth, you know, just to tie in with something that you said earlier, where people say that this has not gone as well as it should be expected. I just want to point out something, that in the first 6 days, Russia took control of territory in Ukraine that's the size of the entire United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Just in terms of size. Now, just understand that from a military perspective, that is absolutely massive.
All right. So, so look, I mean, I also understand that not everything that we're being told is necessarily true. There's an angle to all of this, depending on where you're getting your news. And slowly but surely, we're starting to realize this has always been the case. that our information has been controlled, or it's been filtered, or it's been siphoned into certain places and taken away from others. Just to end off, because we've got very little time left, why has everything gone so quiet around China when they've got this insane COVID policy at the moment? They've basically shut the country down again. Shipping has ground to an absolute halt in China. I saw a picture yesterday of a screenshot of all the shipping lanes in China and how all these ships are basically moored off the Chinese coast. But thousands and thousands, if not millions of ships. And everything has just stopped. What is this?
I wrote a piece fairly recently that I essentially started a conspiracy theory. And my theory is that shutting down Shanghai is an excuse to put a chokehold onto the economies of the West. Because remember that Shanghai effectively is the factory for the entire West. And by putting in bottlenecks out there, you're actually putting a stranglehold on the US economy, particularly in terms of the tech stocks. And you look at the likes of Apple as a significant example. I think that this is part of an overall plan by Russia and China working together. And remember that they actually signed an agreement to this effect 2 weeks before the special military operation got launched. People are not following the paper trail. People are not aware of the extent to which that both China and Russia, and to a lesser extent India, are actually working together for a dramatic realignment of the world order.
There we go. Phumi,
I got so much hate. I said that 2 weeks ago. I got so much hate on the comments here. It's like a magic show, right? It's smoke and mirrors. We're all looking over here, and when the real action is over here. You know? I got so much hate for saying that, Kanthan. Thank you for saying it too.
Now, also, I'd like to point out that Solomon Islands has signed an agreement with China. Australia is now saying that if China establishes a military base in the Solomon Islands, it's going to be a red line for them. And the US has been saying exactly the same thing. Remember that the Solomon Islands is 2,000 miles, about more than 3,000 k's away from Australia, and yet Australia considers that to be a red line. And yet, when Putin says exactly the same thing about Ukraine, which is literally on his doorstep, everyone says, no, you're not allowed to do that.
All right. I'm afraid we're going to have to cut it short now because we ran out of time, but that is the burning platform for this morning. Kanthan, great to have you on. And I'm delighted to see that you and Phumi had to have some agreement in this episode. People prefer it when you fight, but you seem to agree almost the whole way through. We only scratched the surface, I'm afraid, on so many of these subjects. Kanthan, you do publish articles. Tell us where we can find them, because you mentioned them once or twice.
Yeah, kanthanpillay.com. The quickest thing is go there and just use the search box. So if you go there and type in Shanghai, you'll get the entire paper trail around why I think that what's happening in Shanghai right now, and to a lesser extent what's happening in Hong Kong, is a deliberate plan on the part of Xi Jinping to actually cripple the Western economies. And more importantly, I think it's working.
Thank you, Phumi. Thank you, Kanthan. Most especially thank you to you for listening. And we will return with another burning platform next Thursday, a proper full 5-day week. How are we going to handle it? Tomorrow's Friday. We'll see you bright and early in the morning at 6. Cheers, everybody.